Everyone thinks Sun Tzu's Art of War is about winning battles. It's not. It's about avoiding bankruptcy. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Welcome to Finance Untold, where we expose the financial truths history tried to hide. Today's truth: the greatest military strategist in history wasn't obsessed with victory. He was obsessed with cost, the world's most misunderstood book. For most people, Sun Tzu is a name associated with battlefields and strategy memes shared by entrepreneurs who haven't actually read him. He's treated as a philosopher, a victory, a mystical thinker who unlocked the psychology of conflict. But that version misses the point entirely. Because when you strip away the slogans and myth-making, you discover something far more interesting. Sun Tzu wasn't obsessed with winning battles. He was obsessed with avoiding them. He wasn't interested in glory or domination. He was interested in cost. And in a world bleeding itself dry through constant warfare, Sun Tzu became the first thinker to make one truth uncomfortably clear. The greatest danger to a state is eante the enemy in front of you. It's the bill that comes after. People think the art of war is about fighting. It's really about finance. The economic crisis disguised as warfare. To understand Sun Tzu's genius, you have to understand the world he lived in. China, during the spring and autumn period 6th to 5th centuries BCE, was a landscape of fractured kingdoms, each convinced it could unify the world, and each draining its treasury trine. War was constant. Armies grew larger every decade, shifting from aristocratic chariot duels to massive infantry mobilizations, requiring food, metal, supply lines, and taxes at a scale no previous generation had imagined. States weren't just fighting battles. They were conducting full-scale stress tests of their economies. Whenever a king sent an army into the field, he was taking out a loan against his future. And far too often, those loans came due. War was logistical before it was tactical. The moment an army moved, the meter started running. You needed wagons, grain, horses, craftsmen, armorers, cooks, blacksmiths, courtesan. All of them had to be paid or fed. A campaign lasting more than a few months could bankrupt a smaller state. A campaign lasting more than a year could collapse a larger one. And because these kingdoms were trapped in a cycle of insecurity, they kept fighting anyway. It was an arms race before the modern world invented the term, and it was straining the entire political system to the breaking point. Sun Tzu, the world's first risk manager. This is the world Sun Tzu walked into, not as a philosopher in quiet contemplation, but as a strategist forced to solve an economic crisis disguised as a military one. In the West, we romanticize him as an ancient CEO whisperer. But in reality, he was closer to a risk manager. He looked at the numbers, the costs, the timelines, the logistics, and realized that the way states were conducting war was unsustainable. Victory meant nothing if the treasury collapsed, and many rulers never understood that. They believed the enemy's army was their greatest threat. Sun Tzu believed their own spending was. That's why the most important line in the art of war comes at the beginning. War is of vital importance to the state, not glorious, not honorable. Vital meaning dangerous, disruptive, and capable of destroying the very society it claims to defend. He spends the rest of the book explaining how to keep war contained, controlled, and as cheap as possible. He does it in a way that reveals his real obsession: minimizing financial exposure. Famous quotes are actually economic principles. Even his most famous ideas turn out to be economic principles in disguise. When he says the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, that's not mysticism. That's cost avoidance. It's the ancient equivalent of getting the outcome you want without burning capital. When he warns that no nation has ever benefited from prolonged warfare, he's stating a literal fiscal truth. The longer a campaign drags, the more it erodes the state's capacity to function. And when he emphasizes speed, efficiency, intelligence gathering, and psychological pressure, it's because these tools are cheaper than armies. Sun Tzu wasn't trying to win battles. He was trying to prevent states from bankrupting themselves while trying to win battles. The art of war is a spreadsheet. When you read The Art of War with this economic lens, the book stops sounding like ancient poetry and starts sounding like a spreadsheet. Sun Tzu opens by listing 5 fundamental factors that determine the outcome of war. Buried beneath the philosophical language is a simple truth. These are cost variables. He's performing a risk assessment long before that phrase existed. That's why so much of the book is about logistics rather than heroics. Sun Tzu devotes an entire section to the economics of feeding an army, and the logic is brutal. When your army is 20 miles from home, you lose the price of 100 measures of grain. His point is, obvious distance increases cost, and prolonged distance multiplies it. He explains that transporting supplies drains the treasury faster than paying troops, that maintaining an army in the field collapses the agricultural labor base, and that wasteful commanders bankrupt their nations while winning meaningless skirmishes. For a military treatise, it's weirdly uninterested in battle and obsessively interested in how much the battle costs. Sun Tzu understood something modern states often forget. Logistics don't support strategy. Logistics are strategy. Intelligence as cost efficiency. His approach to intelligence reveals the same financial logic. Today, when governments debate surveillance budgets, the discussion is framed in terms of security or ethics. Sun Tzu framed it in terms of cost efficiency. A single spy can prevent an entire army from marching in the wrong direction. A single intercepted message can save a nation millions. He writes that what enables the wise sovereign to strike and conquer is foreknowledge, not courage or force. Foreknowledge is simply the ancient world's word for data. Sun Tzu saw information not as an accessory to warfare, but as the cheapest and most effective weapon available. He was the first strategist to understand that misallocation of information is misallocation of capital. Speed is about economics. Even his emphasis on speed is fundamentally about economics. Speed is the essence of war, he writes. Most readers interpret this as aggressive action, but Sun Tzu's real meaning is subtler. Speed lowers cost. Every day an army spends marching, feeding, and waiting increases financial exposure. Victory delayed is money burned. Victory won through maneuver instead of attrition preserves resources. Sun Tzu's famous preference for flexibility, adaptability, and psychological advantage isn't philosophical flair. It's fiscal discipline, the deepest insight. Opportunity cost. But his deepest financial insight is woven into the structure of the book itself. Every line is about opportunity costs. Every choice a ruler makes closes the door to a cheaper choice. Sun Tzu doesn't oppose war. He opposes waste. And the ultimate waste is fighting battles you didn't have to fight. That's why he praises generals who break resistance without bloodshed, who win through diplomacy, intimidation, misdirection, or alliances. To Sun Tzu, these aren't secondary strategies. They're primary ones because they conserve the state's limited capital. In one of his most revealing passages, he warns that rulers who enjoy warfare for its own sake will bring ruin upon their kingdoms. Behind the poetic language lies a cold accounting principle. If you treat war like a passion instead of a liability, you will eventually default. Modern governments still ignore him. And this is where the story turns contemporary. Because the uncomfortable truth is that Sun Tzu's warnings have echoed through every major conflict of the last 2 centuries. The Soviet Union in Afghanistan, the United States in Vietnam, imperial powers in World War I. These conflicts weren't lost because armies were weak. They were lost because the economic model behind them collapsed. Sun Tzu would have recognized the pattern instantly. Prolonged warfare erodes the state faster than the enemy ever could. Meanwhile, the tools he championed in deception, targeted operations, rapid maneuvering have become the backbone of modern strategy precisely because they're cheaper. Cyber warfare is Sun Tzu. Sanctions are Sun Tzu. Proxy wars, covert influence operations, strategic deterrence, all of them aim to achieve maximum effect with minimal financial exposure. The world's most powerful states still live inside Sun Tzu's balance sheet, whether they acknowledge it or not. The true lesson. The deeper lesson, the one most people miss, is that Sun Tzu wasn't teaching rulers how to win wars. He was teaching them how to avoid national bankruptcy. His true genius was understanding that the cost of conflict outlives the conflict itself. States do not fail because they lose battles. States fail because they drain the capital that keeps them coherent, confident, and functional. Victory is irrelevant if the treasury collapses afterward. The best war is the one that doesn't require repairing your economy when it's over. That's the lens through which the art of war suddenly becomes something entirely different. It's not a book about boldness or aggression. It's a book about restraint. It's not about overpowering opponents. It's about outlasting them. Sun Tzu doesn't glorify triumph. He glorifies stability. To him, the ruler who preserves resources is wiser than the ruler who conquers cities. The general who wins without fighting is wiser than the general who destroys armies. And the state that knows when not to act is stronger than the one that acts out of pride. Sun Tzu's philosophy is not the philosophy of a warrior. It's the philosophy of a steward, someone responsible for maintaining the long-term solvency of the nation. The final truth in the end: Sun Tzu's financial genius lies in his refusal to separate economics from power. He understood that the two are inseparable, that war is merely the most expensive policy decision a state can make, and that the ruler who miscalculates its costs signs his own death warrant. His message is simple, unsettling, and eternally relevant. Strength is not measured by how hard you strike, but by how much you can afford to strike. And history shows that when financial systems collide, it is not the bravest nation that prevails. It's the most economically disciplined. Hit LIKE if this changed how you see strategy. Subscribe to Finance Untold. We expose the financial truths hidden in history. Turn on notifications because every great historical figure has a financial secret. Drop a comment. What other historical figures should we analyze through a financial lens? History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it'll cost you all the same. Thanks for watching. Stay financially untold.